My name is Jacob Adams. I'm a fitness and leadership coach. I help people just like you get to the next level. Have you been asked where you stand on whether you're pro-choice, pro-life, woman's right to choose? I know that for decades, my position has been one that, of course, I'm for a woman's right to choose whether she wants to have a baby or not. It sounds very elegant, very well spoken, very of the times. And so you can imagine my surprise as to why, decades later, my position has recently changed to where I'm not so quick to say I'm pro-choice. I'm not about a woman's right to choose. I'm actually very much against the abortion industry. That's right, industry. An industry that exists, not so much for the benevolent, the benign concept that we may originally have thought it to be, but one that exists for profits, for primarily greed, profit, power, and control. See, I was somebody that, for all intensive or explanatory purposes, most of my life have been indoctrinated by the feminine imperative. That is that being the guy that was conducive and doing all that he could, or being raised by teachers, by society, primarily driven by women to appeal to their needs and wants. And here I am all these years later, at a flux, at some sort of dissonance with that reality. I was watching Ben Shapiro today, and he's not the first person, but he's the first person I trust that has spoken out against the black market of abortion, the abortion black market. Now, if there's nothing else you take with you, you can just Google that, abortion black market. We all know that Google doesn't do their absolute best to get the top headlines out. So even with the editing that Google does, if you just put abortion black market, you're gonna come across some of these ideas. So first, I'll tell you a little bit about my story into how I came to change my position. And I'm gonna give you stories that show that my actual engagement with abortion and pro-choice is not one of just theory. Just one of the stories, for example, years ago, over 10 years ago, a friend calls me and he says, Jacob, and it was all by phone, we didn't text too much back then. Around 2005, 2006, a friend calls me, he says, Jacob, you know, I got my girlfriend pregnant and I really need some money to help cover the abortion. I think it was $500, $400, and he needed $300. And you know, I wasn't jumping up and down at the situation. I didn't have $300 to just throw into the air and never get back. I was concerned about that, and at the time, I also was not really a believer in God as much and a practitioner as I am now. So, you know, I thought about it for about 30 minutes, an hour or something. And this was a friend reaching out to me who I thought was in need. I was like, look, he doesn't want to have a child with this woman, and that was it was not like a one-night stand. And he was reaching out to me and he needed help. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to help him. I talked to my girlfriend at the time. I said, look, so-and-so needs help. And she said, look, Jacob, do what you got to do and help if you want. And so I did. And he had the abortion. He ended up paying me back. You know, and I never thought about it again. I think he was grateful. We never talk about it. It's not something that is discussed on a daily basis. It's just something that happened. I've had situations with that same girlfriend I had that we got her a plan B, you know, used condoms and birth control. and stuff like that. So that's how I've made it this far in life without having babies, is I've been pretty proactive in preventing unwanted pregnancy through condoms, through pulling out, or Plan B, or birth control. There's methods that I've used to prevent pregnancy. Now, I've had pregnancy scares that were either fabricated by a girlfriend, like just trying to see where I stood, seeing if I was about the relationship. Hey, you know, I'm pregnant, and this happened every month. Pregnancy scares, you know, so I've never seen a positive reading from a girlfriend. Like I said, I've been pretty proactive in my methods into not have a baby. So I've never actually seen the test come out positive. Like I said, I've done Plan Bs, etc., etc. Now, one time I had a steady girlfriend. This was back in the late 2000s, like 2009, 2000. This conversation happened around 2010 or 2011. And we were in the kitchen with my girlfriend, and me and her, and I go, hey, listen, what would ever happen if I got you pregnant? And she says, well, I would have the baby. And to which I was like taken aback, because see, I was pretty certain she understood that I didn't want to have a baby with her. Like, I was pretty certain I had discussed that with her. And here I was sort of just testing the water, seeing if we were on the same page, you know. I don't want to have an accident, quote, accident, okay? To which I believe there's no such thing now as an accidental pregnancy, especially with Plan Bs, especially with condoms, especially with women knowing their ovulation cycles. The word accident should be very, very questioned. But at that time, I was like, well, you know, I just want to know, if there was such a thing as an accident, what would you do? It's just, I'd have the baby. And I was infuriated. I was like, well, no, I want you to have an abortion. Okay, I'm giving you two different perspectives here as to, now I'm not so for abortion. I know it's still going to happen. I know my one little video is going to get a few views, etc., etc. Okay, I'm just showing you the backdrop as to what's happened now. This is 10 years later, as to why I'm not for abortions anymore. I'm not so Mr. Pro-choice anymore. Say you might be looking at this like me 10 years ago, being like, this guy's crazy. Of course I'm pro-choice. That's fine. I'm saying I'm no longer that. Okay? See, I'm not going to say, oh, how could you be pro-choice? I will never understand you. No, I was you. If that's where you are right now, I was you. Probably more than you. Probably with less, I lent someone money. I'm telling you the truth here. Okay? So she tells me, Jacob, I hope you never are with somebody that would get rid of one of your babies, which was kind of a compliment. I'm not gonna lie. It kind of made me feel good about myself. Wow, okay, yeah, that sounds good. That sounds like a right attitude to have. I like that. Now, but it still bothered me. So I remember us just being at a standstill. Like, it was like two buttings of a head. Like, I was like, and I dropped it. So I'm just showing you that my position prior to this moment here was very much pro-choice, very much pro-abortion. If I lent someone money to get it, if I was using Plan B pills, if I've been proactive in not having babies, if I've had arguments over not getting babies, and hey, if an accident were to happen, I'd want an abortion. If that's been, now I, to this point, myself have never had to abort a baby with a woman I was with. Up to this point, that's never been the case, okay? Plan Bs, yes. Concerns, pregnancy frights, you know, everything else I said, prevention, yes. That's yes. Okay. Now, what really started changing my perspective to the current reality of now is that, first I'll begin with the harder stuff. That's very hard to kind of process for most people, I think, is that a soul does enter the union of egg and sperm at a pretty early stage. If that's day 1, if that's day 2, if that's day 5, that's day 10, that's not for me to, I'm not such a scientist that can tell you, oh yes, the soul enters the egg and the egg and sperm union. The soul enter on day 3. So if you're gonna have an abortion, make sure it's on day 1 or 2, not on day 3 or 5, because by then the soul's definitely in there. I'm not gonna tell you that because I don't know that. Okay, this is not some bullshit channel, some bullshit realities that don't exist. I can't guarantee that. What I can tell you is I believe that based on my studies in yoga, meditation, and intuition, I believe that there is a mystical reality that happens that the soul enters the egg and sperm union soon enough. So that was my first. I had to come out and make this video just because of that. That is not something I'm thinking. I'm like, I'm gonna make a video and I'm gonna make it against pro-choice because of that one belief. No. What really drove this, what this camel that broke, the straw that broke the camel's back, was profiting from late-term abortions. Okay, trying to keep the baby's body intact, whether it's the eyes, the brains, the internal organs, alive and intact enough to sell on the black market. That is why I'm making this video, because now we have an incentive to murder a fully alive baby, which I'm talking, these babies are ready to come out and have life on earth, not only in the belly now. This is late-term abortions. And this is occurring right now in today's world. And again, this is not something you have to take my word for. You can research it yourself. And the sheer fact that, yes, people like Alex Jones are talking about this. But on the other end of the spectrum, people like Ben Shapiro, a Harvard-educated Jewish conservative, is talking about it and showing videos as like, he's showing graphic videos of like people like literally messing with the leftovers of the aftermath of these unborn children, and doctors talking about the parts, and like on video, doctors talking about the parts of the filaments of the eyes, etc., etc. He goes into how doctors use certain methods like draining the brain and keeping the body in track. I mean, it gets graphic, dude. So the point for me to get on here and make this video and tell you that I'm no longer pro-choice comes from that clarity. Okay, like this is not Jacob's political channel. This is more like, okay, let's just say if you had a child and something was happening to him and I found out about it and I had a voice of any sort and I'm developing a platform of any sort, and say, okay, well, Jacob, where would you stand on that position? This new information has come into my consciousness within the last 30 days, because the first time was Alex Jones talking about it on Joe Rogan. I'm a big fan of Joe Rogan. I like Alex Jones, especially when he's talking to Joe Rogan. And so that said, you know, this is really what's making this come all to the surface here. Okay, and the last thing that was kind of in the subconscious, in the mind here, is that women don't have accidents. Like, women don't have accidents to the extent that, I guess if she's having an abortion, that's probably an accident. And oftentimes women don't really know that this is occurring. Women aren't aware that they're selling their baby's parts on the black market. That's not something that the women are knowing. The doctors are knowingness of this, but the women are not. So that's a big important thing. On the other end of the spectrum, like, there is no such thing as an accident. Typically, in other words, more often than not, number one, more often, outside of rape, okay? Outside of rape. Let's just say that's a no-go. That's a no-zone. I'm saying in everyday life, if a woman could go to that guy and say, hey, you know what? I need to tell you something. I think we're pregnant. Where there's a relationship, or there was the sex was desired by both parties. In situations like that, there cannot be an accident. Now, the ones that do go and get an abortion, maybe that was an accident. But if a woman were to tell you as a man, for example, that you're having an accident, that this is an accident, that is not believable, because of all the plan Bs that are available, because women know their bodies, because it's not such an easy word to sell. Okay, that's like number one. So those were reasons that were permeating before. Like, is there such a thing as an accident? Okay, when does the soul enter? Okay, I can't really speak on those things. But for me now, what really drove this point home was the abortion black market and selling babies' parts on the black market. So that's where I'm out. I'm no longer going to be pro-choice vocally within myself, and there's a big shift here that has to happen. And so I think that prior to 2019, it was more about this liberal, cool, yeah, pro-choice, and now it has to be about, well, look, where do I really stand with this? Like, do I want to be involved in that? And what does this mean for me in my sex life? What does this mean for me in my partner's sex life? What does this mean for this feminine movement of being pro-choice and all this stuff? Like, where do we have to really examine now, like, what's going on in our world? It's not so black and white. It's not so cute cut corners. Like, there's a real problem here. Like, when babies are being murdered and sold for parts on the black market, that's what you call a real problem. If you were to put that in a sentence and say, this is when you use the term real problem. Now it's a real problem. Okay? So now we have to examine that in today's world, and how we're going to go about this real problem. What does this mean for us as a sexual being? What does this mean about how do we approach engaging in conversation about this with our partners? How do we engage in preventing abortions? Number one, like, that's got to be the number one question. How do we prevent abortions, period? Not pro-life, pro-choice. Just get out of that frame, because that frame is driving these murders. So when you have that choice option, now you're going to be driving the murders up. So you have to start, okay, so how do I avoid abortion at all costs? You start there. Okay, so do you have your plan B? Do you have your condoms? Or do you know ovulation cycles? So that would be step one, is when you face now it's 2019, and I say, okay, now we've addressed this real problem. Have condoms, have plan Bs, know where to get them. If you don't have enough money for a plan B, you're not gonna have enough money for an abortion. So you likely should not be having sex. Like, that's just the truth of it. If you can't get that $30, $40, $50, just round up to 50. If you can't get that plan B, then you should not be having sex, okay? Because sex creates babies. And let's just say babies are far more expensive than $50. So if you're having trouble with $50, you should not be having sex. I don't care how good it feels. It's not for you, okay? Once you start making adult decisions that can handle truths, then you can maybe start thinking about sex. But if you can't even handle certain raw, real truths about sex, you can't be an adult about it, then you don't need to be having adult situations. And so yeah, be ready to discuss prevention of abortion, and be ready to, you as a man or a woman, be more honest with yourself and where you stand, and understand that it isn't just about what women want, it's also about what men want in that relationship, whether it's not to be with this particular person. And sometimes these accidents are designed to get a baby from the man regardless of what he wants. So that's like a power play. So this whole industry, this pro-choice thing, it's tied into power plays, control, and profits by greed. So it is not something to be involved in, really. And then so let's start closing up here. The number one mistake a person can make is to not examine any of these ideas, not examine what feminism has done to pro-choice, what this means for a liberated man, what this means for what the black market of abortion actually is, to even discount it fully and think, oh, just crazy old Jacob on his video. Like, that would be the biggest mistake there. So research it yourself. Research this yourself. Look up Ben Shapiro. Look up some of the leading proponents of pro-life. And again, I did not want to make this shift. This shift came out of like necessity. And I've told you my position prior to this was one of being pro-choice. All right, so love to hear your thoughts, or research this yourself. I don't have anything to tell you to go to this website. I already made the video. It's up to you now. You've already heard it. You can make your own research. Peace.